Noah Østergaard sat alone in the spacious living room, sunlight from the floor to ceiling windows casting light across the pale gray rug, hand-woven in Italy. His wheelchair was beside the large window overlooking the garden by Lake Øresund. The lake was still, quiet to the point that one could hear the flutter of wings gliding across the clear Copenhagen sky. Behind Noah was a villa designed in minimalist Nordic architecture, clean, flawless, and emotionless. Every piece of furniture was precisely placed, and each painting was aligned with laser precision. Nothing excessive, nothing out of place. The house felt like a laboratory operated by pure logic where emotion was a variable meant to be eliminated. The 10-year-old boy was born without arms. The early years of Noah's life were a series of struggles against the limitations of his body, and gradually, against the limits of his environment. His father, Lars Østergaard, was a renowned businessman in artificial intelligence, a widower since Noah was 2. From the day his wife Elena died, Lars seemed to have sealed away the last of his emotions, and that detachment spread through the house like a silent, unmelting frost. Lars was not a bad father in the conventional sense. He did not abuse, yell, or raise his voice. He cared for Noah by crafting a physical therapy schedule designed by top experts, hiring private tutors, personal doctors, and private aides, all bound to follow the controlled environment protocol strictly. Do not ask the boy questions, do not play, do not let emotions interfere with the job. Noah's world, therefore, wasn't materially lacking, but it lacked almost every element that defines childhood. No friends, no freedom, no laughter, and most importantly, no touch to the soul. He had grown used to that. In the beginning, Noah cried silently and asked why he wasn't like other children. But time taught him to stop asking and accept. He learned to use his feet and chin to control simple devices. He learned to read with his eyes and study math with software requiring no touchscreen. But as he grew older, he increasingly felt like a program running inside a closed system. He no longer tried to break boundaries. He existed within them. When Noah was younger, he had a toy car customized to be chin-controlled. He remembered the joy he felt the first time it moved, but no one continued the game with him. No one laughed with him. No one fetched the car back so he could play again. Eventually, the car was thrown into a forgotten corner of the house, and the memory was stored away like a childish fragment that adults deemed unnecessary. In that vast house, the only constant sounds were the steady hum of the air conditioning and the clock ticking on the ivory wall. Each passing hour felt terrifyingly identical. Noah didn't feel like he was living day by day. He was merely drifting through them, like an automated ship with no harbor. Lars Østergaard was busy. He spent most of his time in the third-floor office, attending meetings across time zones, signing million-dollar contracts without leaving the house. He monitored everything in the villa through an AI-integrated camera system, from Noah's meal schedules to the exact location of each item in the house. For him, control was a form of love because the world was too chaotic, and he wouldn't allow that chaos to enter his son's life. Noah became a boy living inside a glass cage, a space that was ideal, clean, safe, but had no way out. As usual, Noah sat by the window that morning, looking out at the summer garden blooming with cherry trees. But inside him, there was no color. Even nature outside felt like a moving painting, beautiful, but not his. He had grown used to watching without touching, living without participating. The glass door, wide and clear, reflected his small face, armless but with eyes deep as a still lake, eyes that no longer expected anything. He didn't know that, inside that house, a small change was quietly beginning. A new person had been hired just the week before, a housekeeper named Maid, a young woman of Senegalese descent, with a plain headscarf, quiet but bright eyes, and a heart forged through years of volunteering in Africa. But Noah had never spoken to her, nor did he expect anything. Because everyone was the same, they came, polite, silent, and left. Adults always followed the rules, and he had learned not to hope too much. Like every day, those morning rays passed through the glass, casting Noah's shadow onto the wooden floor. But no one knew that a hidden current had begun to stir in that seemingly repetitive moment. And something or someone was about to step through that glass cage, from the outside, and touch the boy's heart. That afternoon, sunlight stretched through the window panes in the spacious living room. Faint shadows fell across the wool rug, shifting gently with the subtle movements of the leaves outside. Noah sat by the window as usual, silent, observing, and expecting nothing new. At the far end of the room, Maya and Dione entered carrying a bucket of water and a well-worn cleaning cloth. She crept, without making any loud noise, but she didn't seem timid, like the other housekeepers Noah had seen. Maya had a straight posture, a steady rhythm in her steps, and a quiet attentiveness, as if every speck of dust on the window frame held something important waiting to be listened to. Noah noticed her not out of curiosity, but because she was different. Usually new people would glance around, intrigued by the villa's luxury. But not Maya. She didn't look up at the high ceiling, glance at the built-in sound system, or gape at the Italian sculpture in the center of the room. She focused only on the task before her as if she'd lived there for a long time already. The boy had no intention of interacting. He had long since learned how to make himself invisible to adults. If he didn't speak, if he didn't gesture, they wouldn't bother him. They would leave sooner. But Maya didn't leave right away. She wiped down the windowsill and moved over to the bookshelf in the corner of the room, a spot rarely visited. As she bent down, she saw something wedged between the table leg and the wall. Maya paused, set the cloth aside, and gently reached down to pick it up. It was an old toy car, made of faded turquoise plastic, with a loose wheel and a dome-shaped controller mounted on top, specially designed to be operated by chin or foot. Maya turned the car over and gently blew off the thin dust layer. She didn't rush to put it back. Instead, she glanced over at Noah, sitting near the window. That looked brief, but sharp. She didn't look at him with pity, not with curiosity, not with sadness. Just a calm, precise observation, as if she was reading a signal from someone who couldn't speak. Noah quickly turned his face away. He saw what she was holding and he remembered it. That car had once been his only joy when he was 5, custom made by one of the rehabilitation doctors. But after a few weeks, no one cared about that game anymore. He stopped playing too because playing alone had no meaning. He expected Maya to do what the other adults always did, put it back in a box, return it to the silence. But she didn't. She sat on the rug in the middle of the room, flat on the floor, like a child. Without a word, she gently pushed the car toward Noah. The wheels rolled once, a faint rattling sound echoing in the quiet space. Then the car stopped just a few centimeters from Noah's wheelchair. Noah looked at it. His heart tightened, then loosened in a strange way. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know if this was a test, a joke, or just a strange woman who didn't know the rules of this house. He lowered his head, gently pressed his chin down, adjusted his angle slightly, and touched the dome-shaped controller. A small buzz sounded, and the car rolled forward. Slow, slightly tilted, but complete. A soft curve. An imperfect circle. Noah waited for a reaction, but Maya said nothing. She smiled lightly. Not a smile of praise, but of sharing. Then she used her finger to push the car back toward him. This time, Noah didn't hesitate. They continued like that, wordless, without rules, without keeping track of time. The toy car rolled back and forth between two people, a young brown-skinned woman sitting cross-legged on the rug, and a boy without arms, maneuvering by chin from his wheelchair. Both understood the game wasn't in the car. It was in the act of giving and receiving. No one was pushing, no one was teaching, and no one was asking too much. It wasn't therapy. It was a play, and to Noah that was more valuable than any physical therapy he'd ever undergone. From another corner of the room, sunlight had shifted, casting a golden beam across the floor. No laughter rang out in that moment, but something greater than laughter emerged. Genuine joy, without language. Noah smiled. At first, just a curl of the lips. But then, they truly curved upward, not to please anyone. Not because the schedule said so, but because he wanted to. Because for the first time in many years he felt seen. Maya still said nothing. She gently pushed the car, like someone placing trust in another's hands. And this time, Noah caught it without pause. The game continued for a few more minutes or a few years. No one could tell. Time folded, then stretched. There were only 2 people and 1 old car. Then came the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Noah immediately looked up. The old rules flared in his mind. He turned his head, but Maya placed the car next to his foot and quietly stood up, resuming her dusting as if she had never sat down. No one knew that what had just happened was the first crack in the ice encasing a child's heart. And for the first time in a long time, he felt not different. After that afternoon, no one in the house mentioned that the toy car had again rolled across the living room. There was no reprimand from Lars Østergaard, no report from the automated household management system, no camera sounding an alert. But Noah knew for sure. Someone had seen it. Strangely enough, though, the game wasn't banned. It wasn't repeated. But it wasn't extinguished either. And so, from a fragile seed, something quietly began to grow. Maya continued her daily tasks in the following days, dusting, arranging books, and watering the indoor plants. She still moved lightly, avoiding the gaze of longtime housekeepers or the watchful system. But each time she entered the living room where Noah usually sat by the window, there seemed to be an invisible thread between them. Unnamed, undefined, but unmistakably present. Maya didn't speak to him. She never asked what he was doing, thinking, or whether he needed help, but she did begin to do one thing, leaving tiny scraps of paper. The first note appeared on the table near the window, where Noah usually kept his drawing tablet. A piece of paper folded in four. Inside was a simple sketch. A round cat, wearing a hat, lounging on a rooftop. Below was a small line neatly written in Danish. Hope you'll have a truly joyful dream today. Noah stared at it for a long time. He didn't react, except to fold it carefully and place it into the drawer. The next day, another scrap. This time, an orange bus drove down a leafy road drawn in colored pencil. No words below, just the image. But the interesting thing was, the bus had no driver, and the control seat was at the back right-hand side, where a small wheelchair with an attached steering device was positioned. Noah didn't know whether to smile or feel overwhelmed. But his heart warmed in a strange way, like sunlight cutting through a foggy window. 3 days later, he responded. He opened his tablet, using his toes to manipulate the drawing tools slowly but steadily. He drew a house, with 2 stick figures inside. One with frizzy hair, one without arms. Both were sitting opposite each other, playing with a toy car. The drawing was printed and stuck to the back of a chair in the downstairs library, where Maya often shelved books. She found it on Wednesday morning. She didn't say a word, just quietly smiled, took it down, and pinned it on the wall near her cleaning supplies. That night, Noah couldn't sleep. Inside him was a new sensation, a kind of nervous anticipation. From then on, every day, a new drawing was brought in. A new scrap. A silent message. One day, Maya drew a penguin sliding down a snowy roof. Noah replied with a picture of 2 figures building a snowman. He used the shading function to make the white snow stand out. Another day, Maya drew a sailboat, and Noah replied with a hand-drawn map leading to a treasure, marked by a heart symbol. No one said anything, but each drawing was hidden somewhere the other might stumble upon. Under a shelf, behind books, in the laundry basket, even taped beneath the study desk. That was the game, a silent conversation but louder than any spoken words. Noah didn't tell anyone, not even his father, about the drawings. But he began to change. He sat longer at his desk and practiced drawing faster. He closely observed the colors of the flower vase in the dining room, the way light reflected off the glass tabletop as if trying to remember it for later sketches. And Maya, too. She didn't just clean, but began adjusting small objects around the room so Noah could reach them with his feet or chin. A book is tilted slightly to keep it from sliding. A tray of paints was moved to a lower shelf. A paper box was given a rubber knob so he could pull it with his foot. No one assigned these tasks to Maya. She didn't report them, didn't ask permission. But Noah noticed from those minor changes that she was paying attention to him, even when absent. One day, while drawing, he suddenly sensed Maya standing behind him. But instead of walking away, she stayed silent, just stood there for a few seconds, then gently placed a picture book beside him on the floor. She didn't say anything, only lightly tapping the book's cover, as if to say, "You might like this," then left. He opened the book. On the first page was a line, "Everyone has their way of telling a story. Tell it your way." Noah touched the page, his chin trembling slightly. Not from sadness, but because something inside him was blooming, like a seed breaking through stone after a long winter. In the past, Silence in this house had meant distance. But with Maya, silence became a safe space. No explanation needed, no defense required, just presence. Little by little, Noah no longer feared the long days, because each day now brought a response. A new drawing, an untold story, a nameless game, but one that made him feel less alone. He no longer counted the days through the cold glass window for the first time in years. He counted them through tiny scraps of paper pieces that stitched together a life. Saturday afternoon. The sky above Copenhagen was pale gray, a light breeze fluttering through the cherry blossoms in the front yard. In the ground floor living room, faint sunlight filtered through the large glass doors, casting dappled patches on the rug. A peaceful moment, no therapy schedule, tutors, or beeping alerts from the smart home system. Noah was sitting near the window when Maya entered in his usual spot, carrying a fabric basket filled with spare pillow covers and some folded blankets. She was about to take them to the laundry, but her eyes caught Noah's gaze lingering on the basket, and Maya saw that look. No words, no explanation. She set the basket down, pulled out 2 pillows, 3, then 4. She arranged them in a row, like a low wall. Noah tilted his head, watching. The boy understood when Maya added pillows to both sides, leaving a small gap in the front like a little doorway. A castle was being built. Noah pointed in different directions with his foot. Maya followed each gesture, adjusting pillow positions and spreading a blanket on the floor like a carpet. She placed a few modified toys, the toy car from before, a box of building blocks, a large print comic book around the area. No roof, no real walls. But to Noah, it was his kingdom where there were no cameras, nurses, or progress charts. He wheeled his chair through the castle gate. For the first time, the space surrounding him wasn't dictated by his father, nor programmed by a monitoring system. The pillows muffled the living room's acoustics. It felt like he was truly somewhere else. Maya didn't step inside. She sat just outside, leaning against the pillow wall. Her hands didn't touch the toys, didn't direct him. She let Noah explore, move, and choose toys on his own. When a block slipped from his prosthetic arm, she didn't rush to retrieve it. She waited for him to try to bend down and push it back using his foot. And when he succeeded, he laughed. Just a little. But it was real. Not a single word was spoken. But both of them knew. This was a space where he didn't have to play the role of the armless child in rehab. This was a place where he got to be a child. On an ordinary afternoon, a pillow castle symbolized something Noah had never known before. Autonomy. Upstairs, Lars Østergaard sat before 3 screens, each showing a different corner of the villa: front yard, hallway, and living room. A small window in the corner of one screen displayed the living room from a high-angle footage from a hidden camera in the ceiling light. Lars saw the scene. Pillows scattered, Maya sitting on the floor. Amid the room's usual gallery-like stillness, the clutter stood out like a system error. He frowned. That scene did not belong in the life design he had programmed for his son. There was no data field permitting house staff to play with children. No schedule entry for building castles from pillows. No therapeutic milestone labeled spontaneous laughter. And Lars stood up. It took him only 3 minutes to walk down the stairs, cross the hallway, and enter the room still quiet, like a memorial to a tightly controlled childhood. Noah looked up. He saw his father. His body froze. The prosthetic arms had been temporarily removed, resting beside his thigh. A soft breeze passed through the glass door, rustling a blanket like a flag above the castle gate. Lars didn't say much. He stepped into the pillow castle's middle and tidied up. Pillows were stacked neatly and returned to the basket. Blankets were folded and taken back to the closet. Toys were returned to the shelves according to the storage map. The entire process resembled a system reset after an error detection. Noah watched each motion without blinking. Lips tightly sealed. Maya remained still. She didn't interfere, didn't apologize, didn't leave. She watched in silence. When Lars folded the final pillow, he turned to his son, placed a hand on his shoulder, and said a single sentence: "The living room needs to stay tidy." Then he left the room as pristine as if no game had ever occurred. That evening, after the staff had gone home, Lars passed by his son's bedroom. Noah was asleep, the dim nightlight casting a soft glow around the bed. He entered quietly and adjusted the blanket for the boy. As he turned to leave, his eyes caught a small slip of paper peeking from under the pillow. He pulled it out and gently unfolded it. A single line typed in uneven strokes printed from the tablet pen. The window feels less lonely. Just 5 words. But they pierced him like a long-forgotten key suddenly unlocking a door in his chest. Lars Østergaard stood there for a long time. In his hand, a tiny piece of paper. In his heart, a massive question. In trying to keep everything safe, had he unknowingly destroyed the only place where his son felt normal? He didn't answer. He folded the paper with trembling hands for the first time in many years. The kitchen in the Østergaard mansion, on a late weekend afternoon, didn't smell of baked goods like it usually did. Maya sat alone in the corner of the table, holding a cup of ginger tea that had long gone cold. A small cardboard box on the table, wrapped in brown paper, sits silently as if it contained something too important to be opened hastily. She had planned this more than a month ago. Maya remembered every time she saw Noah frown while trying to hold his drawing pen between his chin and the table. She remembered each time he struggled to guide a slipping piece of paper back in place unnoticed. And those moments when he tried to grasp a building block but failed because he lacked enough strength in his shoulder or foot, she remembered even more. These minor incidents didn't cause injuries, but they pierced her heart like silent needles because she knew a child would never truly feel part of the world if he constantly had to wait for someone else to help him reach it. So with every paycheck, she set aside a small portion. No new clothes, no takeout coffee after work, no train rides she walked back to her flat, all for the gift she believed was meant for the right person at the right time. A simple pair of mechanical hands, not the expensive kind you'd find in private hospitals, but lightweight, easy to wear with flexible grip functions for children. No need for artificial neural systems. Just straps, shoulder strength, and determination. When the package arrived, Maya cried. Not out of emotion, but relief. She finally held a piece of the key to expand Noah's world. That afternoon, Noah sat at the low table near the window, slowly controlling his familiar drawing software on the tablet. His face was focused, lips tight, shoulder tilted, his body taut like a drawn bow to finish a single line. Maya entered silently, placed the brown-wrapped box before him, then sat beside him but not too close. She spoke gently in simple Danish. "Try this, see how it feels." Noah looked at her, his eyes filled with curiosity laced with hesitation. He wasn't used to surprises. In his world, surprises meant change, and change was often frightening. But he still opened the box. When the paper was unwrapped, and the silver prosthetic hand appeared with soft straps, shoulder-driven joints, and slender but sturdy mechanical fingers, Noah looked up, his eyes wide. Not with fear, but stunned by the possibilities. He said nothing. Maya didn't push. She gently slid the straps over his shoulder, adjusted the harness, and fastened the clip behind his neck and chest. She checked the angle and tapped softly on the elbow joint to indicate that this is the spot where you'll use shoulder force to move. Noah tried lifting his shoulder. The mechanical fingers opened, paused, then closed as if grabbing something. He tried again. Each motion was clumsy, unsteady, awkward, but after the 5th try, he managed to pick up a small wooden block from the table. That moment, no one laughed aloud. But no one breathed either. Noah looked down at the block in his hand, then slowly lifted it using shoulder and upper back strength and placed it on the table. For the first time, he didn't need someone to hand him an object. He had taken it himself. And then, as if a door had been blown wide open, Noah began testing everything around the table: the colored pen, the eraser, the plastic cup of water, books, and puzzle pieces. He continuously grasped, opened, held, released like a new symphony starting after years of silence. When Maya turned to look, she saw the boy holding 2 items. His left hand clutched a toy car, and his right hand held a puzzle piece. Both objects he used to be able to touch with his feet or chin. Now, he held them with his hands. Not real ones, but hands gifted from someone's faith in him. Noah said nothing. But he left his spot, rolled his chair to the bookshelf. On the shelf, an old toy lay among dusty books. A small plastic figurine foot operated, his first toy from when he was very young. One he'd kept because no one cared it was still there. He picked it up for the first time, with a prosthetic hand, then wheeled back, stopping in front of Maya. He held it out, his robotic hand slowly opening as a gift. Maya didn't dare accept it immediately. "Are you sure?" she asked, voice trembling like someone being offered a childhood treasure. Noah nodded, a slight but decisive nod, not out of politeness, not from pressure, but because he wanted to share a part of his core with the one who truly saw him. Maya received the gift with both hands, as gently as lifting a piece of someone's heart. In the hallway, Lars Østergaard happened to pass by and glanced through the open door. He saw Noah and Maya, no dialogue, no therapeutic session, no structured activity, just two human beings sharing a tiny object that changed the entire atmosphere of the house. And in that father's heart, a deep confusion stirred. For years, he had invested in high-tech rehabilitation devices, top-tier doctors, and Swiss-trained technicians. But no one, not a single person, had made Noah lift his hand and give away a piece of his childhood memory like Maya did. He stood there, not stepping in and not calling, not commanding. He just watched for a long time. And for the first time, he began to doubt whether he truly understood what it meant to care. Evenings at the Østergaard estate were usually as silent as a closed gallery. Hallway lights adjusted automatically to a warm amber hue. The grandfather clock in the living room ticked with programmed precision. Everything in the house, from the chill of the air conditioning to the placement of silverware, followed a logic built from Lars's worldview. Cleanliness, minimalism, absolute control. But ever since Maya arrived, something had begun to slip out of that programmed zone. Lars had been silently observing. From the office window, ceiling cameras, and hallway as he passed by, he saw his son, changing. Though he couldn't define it precisely, it felt like some inner structure had cracked. After dinner, he entered the kitchen that evening, where Maya rinsed a few glass cups. She turned when she heard footsteps, gently placing the dish towel on the table. Her eyes were bright, calm, but unflinching. Lars stood straight, hands in his pockets. His voice remained low, clear, not raised, but every word carried an invisible force. "Miss Maya," he said, "I've been observing your relationship with Noah for some time." Maya didn't speak. She listened. "I need you to remember," he continued, "your role in this house is specific: cleaning, logistical support, adherence to household protocols." His tone was steady, not angry, but the coldness in his cadence was sharper than any scolding. "You're exceeding that function. I'm concerned that what you're doing may confuse Noah." That final phrase, "may confuse," was the core. He feared his son, the boy he had shielded from disorder, from disappointment, from fragile attachments, was beginning to expect something beyond the schedule: emotion, connection, trust. And to Lars, those things always came with risk. Maya calmly dried her hands, turned back, stood tall, facing him, her eyes unflinching. "I understand the boundaries you've set," she said in French tinged with her distinct Senegalese intonation. "But I'm not trying to exceed my role. I'm showing up the way the boy needs right now." Lars frowned. He had prepared to be resisted, or apologized to, or dodged. But not for an answer like that. "Needs?" he emphasized. "Yes," Maya replied. "Not a specialist, not a job description, just a human who knows when to stay silent, when to wait, and not to pull back when he tries to reach out." The calm in her words unsettled Lars more than any defiance. There was no sign of fear over losing her job, no quivering voice, no attempt to defend herself. Only sincerity, deep sincerity. He stepped back slightly, silent. Then, without another word, he gave a faint nod, not clearly approval nor dismissal, and turned to leave. As the kitchen door closed behind him, Maya stood still for a long time, not out of worry for herself, but she knew that the first touch with power is always a warning, even when wrapped in politeness. She continued her work as usual, but in her heart she knew the world she and Noah were quietly building, a world of connection and small freedoms, had been noticed. And the looming question, would it be extinguished or acknowledged? That night, Lars entered his study, where a lamp cast a cone of light onto the ebony desk. On it lay a file on Noah, the next 3-month rehab plan, the therapist's report on his learning progress. But his eyes didn't go to those. Instead, they went to the colored drawings taped along the inside of the bookshelf door, copies of pictures Noah had drawn in recent weeks. They all included Maya, and he couldn't deny it. Noah had never drawn anyone this much before. One picture showed the boy using his prosthetic hand to hold a flag, with Maya beside him raising a fist. Above them, a messy line written in crayon: "We win." What victory? Surpassing limitations? or simply feeling like he could live as a normal child. Lars sat down, fingers interlaced, eyes unfocused, and in the stillness of that grand estate, the most powerful man in it was no longer sure if what he was doing was right. That morning, the sky over Copenhagen broke into a soft sunlight after days of gray clouds. In the ground floor living room, Noah did something he had never felt confident enough to do on his own, completing a complex drawing using his prosthetic hands. The paper was securely placed on the stand Maya had once adjusted. The colors were vivid, and the lines were still clumsy but full of intention. In the drawing were two characters, a boy with robotic hands and a woman with a head wrap, standing side by side, raising a hand-drawn flag with scribbled English words. "We win." It wasn't just a drawing. Noah's first declaration was written with trembling lines and a brave heart. He looked at his work for a long time. Usually, he would wait for someone to bring it to Maya. But this time, Noah wanted to do it himself. He knew Maya was leaning against the guest reception room. On the second floor, he also knew the staircase was an absolute boundary in this house. One rule had constantly been repeated: do not go up or down the stairs without supervision. But today, he couldn't wait. The drawing was folded carefully and placed in the fabric pouch on the side of his wheelchair. Noah wheeled slowly out of the living room, across the hall, and up to the dark wooden staircase, the place he had always been forbidden to approach. He stopped. He looked up at the steps as if facing a mountain, not too tall but full of challenge for a body without real arms. He slid out of the wheelchair slowly, inch by inch. His legs were weak but determined, the prosthetic hand trembling yet still reaching for the wooden railing. He lifted himself, half pulling, half sliding, step by step. Sweat dotted his forehead, his lips pressed tight. The drawing stayed in the pouch. It didn't fall. He protected it like a treasure. At the sixth step, the wheelchair tilted behind. A slight clatter echoed as it lost balance. He turned his head, just a fraction of a second, but it was enough to lose control. The prosthetic hand slipped from the railing. His small, armless body fell, tipping sideways, crashing hard against the stone edge of the stairs. The sound echoed through the hallway. Noah screamed, a cry that tore through the usual silence of the mansion. In less than 30 seconds, Maya appeared first. She had just exited the room when she heard the noise and rushed down the stairs. The sight before her, the boy lying sideways on the floor, his prosthetic twisted, one leg bruised and red, his face contorted in pain. "Noah." She knelt, gently holding his neck, eyes scanning for injuries. Noah hadn't fainted, but his breath was shallow. His eyes were open, his prosthetic hand curled. He couldn't speak, only looked at Maya, as if trying to say, "I just wanted to give it to you." A moment later, Lars Østergaard appeared, pale-faced, ordering the driver to bring the car to the back gate. He said nothing to Maya, only focusing on the doctor, the numbers, the temperature, the blood pressure. Everything is precise and procedural. But his eyes betrayed something else: horror and guilt. At Frederiksberg Hospital, doctors quickly confirmed a sprained wrist on the prosthetic side, deep bruising on the hip, and a few scrapes on the forehead. No internal damage, no broken bones. But the most painful injury no one saw: the quiet disappointment in the boy's eyes when he found his drawing crumpled and creased in the pouch. In the waiting room, Lars finally turned to Maya, sitting near the hospital window. His voice no longer had the tone of command. "I shouldn't have let this happen." Maya looked up, her voice soft yet firm. "Number, you let everything happen the way you thought was safe. But safety isn't living. Sometimes, overprotection is just another way of denying someone their humanity." He didn't answer, but his eyes sank deeper. That evening, after Noah had received pain medication and was asleep in the hospital bed, Lars sat beside him. His eyes rested on the prosthetic hand lying on the shelf, detached for adjustment. Maya stood near the door, not intervening. This moment was for the father and son. When Noah stirred slightly, his vision blurred from the medication, and he looked around and stopped at his father sitting nearby. His voice was weak, but clear. "I just wanted to give it to her." The simple sentence, no complaint, no blame. Yet Lars Østergaard felt something squeeze his chest tightly. Not because his son had fallen, but because, for the first time, He saw that his son had chosen to move toward a person, not just wait for guidance. A small action, but a declaration of autonomy, of trust, of love. Lars bowed his head and took his child's small hand, not to check temperature or hold still for a blood pressure reading, but to be there. And Maya, standing at the door, understood that something within Lars had begun to melt. That afternoon, Copenhagen was unusually quiet. Lake Øresund lay flat as a mirror, reflecting the misty sky, tinted with the silvery blue hue of the approaching autumn. The Østergaard mansion also felt more subdued than usual. Noah was still resting at the hospital. Maya had returned home to tidy up the boy's room, preparing to welcome him back. As for Lars, he went up to the attic. He told the housekeeper he needed to find an old photograph to place in the frame on his desk, but in truth, he just wanted to find something that belonged to Elena. Elena, the only woman who had ever softened him, had been gone for over 8 years, but traces of her still lingered in the house. The curtains were tied slightly askew, on the dining table still set with the knife and fork arrangement she had preferred, and even in how he never let anyone touch the third-floor bookshelf where she had once drafted a children's book that was never completed. In the attic, dust lay thick, boxes stacked high, and the scent of old wood mingled with time. Lars followed the handwritten labels in Elena's familiar script. Wedding photos, teaching materials, Noah, first month, and finally stopped before a smaller box tucked deep at the far end of the attic. The label was faded, but he could still read it. Elena. Personal notes. For reasons he couldn't explain, Lars brought it downstairs. He placed it on the desk in the study, opened the lid, and inside were a few old cards, several small photos, and many soft-covered notebooks dated in violet ink. They were Elena's journals. Lars was not the kind of man to pry into others' thoughts. But this time, he needed something to understand. Not Elena's past, but the future of himself, Noah, and Maya. He flipped through the pages. Notes on her teaching days, little memories, longing for her mother, and even the early days of her pregnancy with Noah filled with emotions of both anticipation and anxiety. And then, one page made him freeze. I've started volunteering weekly at the Grendal Children's Center. There's a girl named Maya, of African descent, around 17 or 18. She's quiet, but her eyes follow each child as if listening to their every breath. I've never seen anyone capable of making a special needs child sit still just by being looked at. Maya doesn't speak much, but she is always present, truly present, no force, no pity. Lars furrowed his brow. Maya? He flipped further. This week, Maya taught a boy with no arms to control a toy with his chin. No loud cheering, no, you can do it kind of encouragement. Just waiting, letting the boy take the step himself. The whole room was silent, and everyone was speechless when the toy car moved. I cried. His heart began to beat more slowly. The story is identical to what he witnessed between Maya and Noah. Lars sank into the chair, the journal wide open in his hands. He couldn't rationalize this with his usual logic. It couldn't be a coincidence. It couldn't be random. Elena, the woman who had deeply understood silence, had once seen that in Maya. And then, on an older page of the journal, a brief line left him breathless. If anything happens to me, I hope someone like Maya will enter our child's life. Lars closed his eyes. He sat there, silently, hand resting on the soft paper, trembling. Elena had never written an emotional will, but this was her quietest wish. Not someone like Maya, but Maya herself, the woman whom fate somehow had brought back to exactly where she needed to be, at the exact moment Noah began to crack away from his glass-wrapped world. No one arranged it. No one planned it. Only something beyond time and logic connected two women who had once silently observed a child unlike any other. Lars closed the journal, did not put it away. He placed it on the desk, where it could be seen. He looked out the window where the light from Lake Øresund streamed in diagonally and knew, with certainty, Maya was no longer a maid, no longer an outsider. She was the quiet note Elena had once trusted, and now he was beginning to trust as well. That morning, the Østergaard mansion welcomed the early sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling curtains. There was something different in the air. Lighter, less heavy. It was as if an invisible door had opened the night before, after Lars had read Elena's journal. Maya stepped into the kitchen as usual, tying her turban around her hair, preparing for a day of cleaning, laundry, and a hospital visit in the afternoon. She had thought she wouldn't stay here long, not since the cold conversation with Lars a few days prior. But she hadn't left, because of Noah's eyes, because of the small trust building day by day, and because, deep down, she didn't want to abandon a boy trying to stand up on his own in a world full of constraints. Footsteps echoed behind her, making her turn. It was Lars, neatly dressed, but with eyes that were quieter and somehow more human. "Miss Maya." Maya set the glass down and turned, her eyes expectant. "I want to revise the arrangement." She didn't speak, but her hand lightly tightened the cloth at her chest. "I once hired you for a specific, limited, clearly defined role," Lars said, eyes unblinking. "But I was wrong." A silent beat. Noah doesn't need a servant. He needs someone who dares to see him. Not through a stethoscope, not through a chart, but with heart and patience. Maya still didn't interrupt. "I used to think that, to protect my son, I had to build a greenhouse around him. But I forgot that no light can pass through overly thick glass. And no hand can touch the boy's heart if I keep everyone outside." He paused, eyes looking directly at Maya, not as a superior, but as a father learning humility. "I want to invite you. No. I want to acknowledge that you are an essential part of our lives, not as a maid, but as Noah's companion, a person with the right to choose." With a voice, Maya blinked. Her eyes were as deep as the Gambia River in the rainy season. She had heard hundreds of promises, hundreds of invitations, but never an acknowledgement from a powerful man learning to be human. "I'll increase your salary. But not just for the job," Lars said more softly, "because I want Noah to know that the person he trusts is respected through actions, not just presence." Maya stepped closer, unhurried. "What about you?" she asked. Lars looked surprised. "Me? Are you ready to let someone be present beside you? Not as an employee, but as a human being. It's enough to challenge, anger, and help you realize you can change too?" That question flipped the balance. He was silent for a long while, then slowly nodded for the first time, not out of politeness or formality, but from the heart. "I'm ready. Though I don't know where to start learning." Maya smiled. "From listening, I think." That afternoon, Lars went to the hospital with Maya. For the first time, he did not take his car but sat in the back seat beside her. In the hospital room, Noah was playing with building blocks using one real hand and one mechanical hand adjusted by the hospital technician. When he saw them walk in together, he looked up, confused, then lit up. Maya walked over first, placed a hand on his shoulder, smiling. Lars followed behind, crouched at his son's eye level, and presented a small picture frame. Inside was the wrinkled drawing Noah had tried to bring to Maya. It had been laminated, flattened, and framed in walnut wood. Beneath the frame, a small line printed in black ink. "This is what courage looks like." Noah touched the frame with his mechanical hand, then looked up, not laughing, just a slight nod. But in his eyes, something was no longer there, the fear of being left behind. And something had just settled in. Safety not from high walls, but from hearts willing to listen together. The day Noah was discharged, Copenhagen wasn't radiant but gentle. A fine mist fell, thin as spider silk. Maya wrapped the boy in a light gray wool sweater, placed a sun hat on his head, and carefully stuck a dinosaur sticker onto the side of his wheelchair. Noah sat silently in the chair, eyes gazing out the hospital window. In the past, whenever he left a place, he would carry a sense of emptiness with him, as if leaving a safe zone to return to a harsh reality. But today was different, because the person pushing his chair was Maya. And the one opening the car door was Lars Østergaard, not with his usual brooding face, but with a smile that wasn't yet fully formed, yet already sincere. The wheelchair was folded neatly. Noah was lifted into the car by the very father who once hesitated to touch him for too long. And as he settled into the seat and fastened his belt, Maya leaned down and whispered, "Let's go home, Noah." He turned to her. His eyes sparkled. For the first time, the word home didn't make him anxious. On the way back, Lars drove. Maya sat in the front. Noah, in the back. The three didn't speak much, but soft jazz from the radio filled the silence. At a red light, Lars glanced into the rearview mirror and saw Noah scribbling something on his small sketchboard. When they arrived, instead of entering through the usual front door, Lars unexpectedly turned the car around to the back. Maya looked surprised. This way, there's a ramp here. Designed by Elena, though it was never used. I had it fixed up, Lars said. Maya pressed her lips together. She didn't respond. But she knew that act meant more than 1,000 apologies. Noah's room had been tidied inside the house. His drawings were framed and hung on the walls. A corner was dedicated to a new Lego set. And most strikingly, at the center of the wall was a large print of the drawing he had made for Maya, with the words, "We win," embroidered along the edge by someone in the house. As he entered, Noah was stunned. He touched the wall, the chair, the things that once felt distant now familiar. Then he turned to Maya and extended his two mechanical arms. No one said a word. Maya bent down and embraced him, not lightly like a nurse hugging a patient, but like a temporary mother, someone trusted enough to be leaned on. That evening, they ate dinner in the main dining room. For the first time in years, Lars didn't dine alone. He served Maya a dish. Noah, in a weak but clear voice, shared his dream the night before. He dreamed of having real arms, flying out of the glass house to bring someone in. When Noah fell asleep, Maya went to the kitchen to tidy up and found Lars standing in the hallway, holding an old photograph. It was a photo of Elena taken at her university graduation, beside a young African woman with a shy yet warm gaze. "Is that her?" Maya asked softly. Lars nodded. "She once told me about a girl named Maya, with eyes no one could forget." Both fell silent for a long time. Then Lars said without looking at her, "I don't know if you plan to leave, but if you choose to stay, I hope it won't be for the job." Maya smiled, calm. "I don't work here. I live here." The next morning, as sunlight streamed through the second-floor window, Noah woke up and rolled out of bed using the technique he learned at the hospital. He opened his door alone and wheeled down the hallway. No one came rushing to stop him. No voices were saying, "Don't. Dangerous. Back up." And for the first time, he wheeled himself into the kitchen where Maya was pouring coffee and Lars was reading the paper, and said in the most unmistakable voice, "I'm hungry." Maya set her cup down and smiled. "Good. Breakfast is ready." Lars folded the newspaper, stood up, and fetched a plate for his son. A family, not by the standard mold, not perfect, but real. No longer a programmed mansion, but a home that knows how to love.